So this is a project that is mimicking our urban coyote project. If you're familiar with it, you can go on the website. Thank you. And it's one of the animals that I'm going to date myself here. I first started with the district in 1980. And it's one of the animals I never thought I'd be working with in Chicago metropolitan area. Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Iowa, they all imported otters from Louisiana in the 90s. And none of the otters that were involved in the Cook County project came from this sorry. None of the otters that are involved in this project came from that release. All of these otters either originated from Wisconsin or from Indiana. We know that because we do the mitochondrial DNA on all the animals that we handle. Starting in the early 90s, we first started to notice that we had otters back in the Chicago metropolitan area. We were very excited because now we had a new apex predator that was available to us to study that hadn't been on the landscape for over 100 years. It was a very exciting time, and as I indicated before, it was an animal that I did not think that I would be handling. Got it. Thank you. So the first otter showed up in the extreme southeast and extreme northwest. The northwest includes the Flint Creek, Poplar Creek, and Spring Creek drainages, which are part of the Fox River watershed. So it's a tale of two situations for otters in the metropolitan area. If you look in the peer-reviewed literature, otters are mostly studied in harvested rural areas. So it was very exciting to have the first urban study of its kind. What we ended up with were two groups of otters. We ended up with otters that were in the river systems and otters that were on the mosaic of wetlands throughout the region. So we first started to see tracks like this in the wintertime. They're very diagnostic. I do aerial surveys every year for white-tailed deer. And as a part of those surveys, I'm looking down on the ground and I can distinctly see otter tracks. Otters are mustelids. They leave a very diagnostic track that's visible even from the air. So we were able to pick out where these animals were showing up. So this is the typical otter moving across the frozen wetland. They're jump, 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 slide, jump, 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 slide. I don't like to be anthropomorphic about wildlife, being a biologist, but if there's an animal out there that's having fun, this is the guy that's having fun. I have many examples of otters that in the wintertime where they've got a steep bank going down into the water, they'll spend an hour running up to the top, sliding down, running up to the top, sliding down, the whole family group doing this. It just doesn't make sense as a biologist to see behavior like that. It wastes a lot of energy, and everything's about energy. So another thing we're looking for are latrine sites. And one of the things that we do in Cook County, in the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, is we use wildlife as environmental and health sensors. We study zoonotic disease. That's the foundation of all of our work. I'm responsible for everything in Cook County but game fish. So everything else is under my aegis. We take blood and tissue samples from everything we handle, 800 to 1,400 animals a year, and I store them back in ultra cold freezers, and I provide that material to CDC, NIH, and other health agencies. They use me like a library. I've got a library that goes back 4 decades and has tens of thousands of samples. That's my direct benefit to the public. But in the process, I get to play with all these animals. So it allows me to attract a lot of other researchers to come in and look at what we're doing. So what we have found in general, when animals move from a rural agricultural situation into an urban situation, is their diets change dramatically. They tend to be very plastic in their abilities to survive in an urban setting. And one of the things I want you to notice, if you look in the literature, you don't look at otters as being scavengers. You were actually able to document otters going up onto the roadways and taking roadkill and taking it back down into the creek. Also, you don't hear about otters eating insects. They love giant water beetles, especially in the wintertime. The very first otter that we put a transmitter in was in a pond. The first thing he did was he ate all the carp and the goldfish, and then he ate all the clams, and then he ate all the bullheads, all the crayfish, and then he got down to the point where he was eating giant water beetles. And then at that point, he had to move. The interesting thing about it, though, he was up a mile and a half from any waterway. So he negotiated I wish I had a GPS transmitter on him. He went a mile and a half through urban commercial area to get back into the Little Calumet River, which is a really nasty river in southern Cook County. So there's a couple of ways of determining what animals are eating. You can go to latrine sites, and that'll tell you what the animal's eaten in the last 8 to 10 hours. You can do stomach analysis. That'll tell you what his last meal is. You can watch the animal, and you'll see all kinds of, that one's got a tadpole in his mouth. These images are all from a guy by the name of Dr. Jeff Nelson. He's a brilliant physician, and he quit seeing patients, and all he does is take pictures now. But these guys are true predators. These are the apex predators of our wetlands in this area, and they will decimate muskrat and beaver groups. They can handle a beaver up to about 20, 22 pounds without a problem. And it's just amazing what they're able to do. This is a large male that was on one of our sites that completely took out. It was a first time pair of Canada geese, and it one by one in one morning took out every gosling, and was just amazing at it. So this is the reason why I take a picture of this is I've got the trap for the otter right underneath where he left the frog on top of my trap. Yeah, he was telling me what he thought of my efforts. So we're particularly interested in the Fox River, and that's what I'm going to talk about. In the watersheds that I mentioned before, early on when otters first reappeared in the Chicagoland area in northern Illinois, they were on the endangered species list. And I was also monitoring endangered mollusks in one of our base flow quality streams, and I actually had each bivalve numbered, and I would go out and monitor them a couple times a year. And I went out there to monitor them. On one side was a midden of all the shells, and the other side was the midden of all the shells. And I thought someone was playing a game on me. Turns out a male otter came through and wiped out my endangered mollusk. So I called the state fur biologist at the time, who was also on the endangered species board, and I said, I've got a problem. He says, I know you've got a lot of problems, but he goes, what are you talking about? I said, I've got one endangered species eating another. And he said, well, tell me about it. I said, well, I got an otter that's eating up all my endangered mollusks. And he started laughing. And he said, well, it sucks to be lower on the evolutionary chain. He had no sympathy at all for the situation. So this is in the wintertime. This is a very large male otter. And what he's got there is a catfish, a channel catfish. I measured it after the fact, and it was 36 inches long. And what the behavior of catfish in the wintertime is that they like to pool up, they pod up. So when the water gets real cold, they get very immobile, but they end up in a big group. And this otter every day would go down and grab another catfish. So here he is eating his catfish, enjoying his meal, and then he realizes that there's something wrong. Someone's watching him. So he dives in the water. That's the catfish in the back. That's the otter up front with a sunfish in his mouth. So Jeff Nelson's hiding in the cattails right in front of you here. And so he realizes something's wrong. He's trying to figure it out. And once again, I don't want to get anthropomorphic, but that's a mad otter. He actually started growling at Jeff. Fascinating creatures, just fascinating. So then with that, he dove back underneath the ice, He went back over to his catfish, he glanded the catfish and rolled on it to market, so no one else would take it. So how are we able to do this? So we go out and we catch otters. Otters are really easy to catch if you want to kill them. They're really hard to catch if you don't want to hurt them. The tools you can use to catch an otter and not hurt it are very, very limited. So it's a hard thing to do. So initially we were putting the transmitters in ourselves. It's an internal transmitter. But then I tapped the folks over at the Brookfield Zoo, and they bring in their residents to practice on our otters now. So at the bottom of that radiograph, you can see the transmitter that's in the abdomen of the otter. It floats freely. Otters don't have necks, so you can't put a collar on them like you can a coyote or a deer. And then we take them back out and release them where they came from. So I talked a little bit about the food habits of the otter. The limiting factor is it's really hard to get into a situation where you can watch an otter eat. Normally, they're very secretive about that, and a lot of times they're doing it at night. Those images happened in a place where there was a family group on an island within 20 yards of the shore, and every day they emerged off the island at about 7:30 and hunted. So they were very available to photographers. It was an amazing group. During the urban coyote study, we met up with a researcher by the name of Seth Newsom out of Arizona State. Left? Is that how much time's left? Okay. And he came up with a new idea. It's called stable isotope analysis. So you know how long the whisker is on the otter. You also know the growth rate. So you can cut it into 1 week segments. And then you can follow what that otter is eating, or the coyote is eating, or the mink is eating every single week. And they can't hide anything. So when an otter is eating mollusks or slimy, gooey things, you're not going to notice it in the stomach. You're not going to notice it in the latrine. They can't hide. So this is an incredible benefit to us trying to figure out what these guys are eating. So real quick, I'm just going to show you a couple of slides here. So this is about 6 miles from the Fox River. It's in the Flint Creek drainage is on the top of the screen, and the Poplar Creek drainage is in the bottom of the screen. This is the typical home range of a female. So it fits the paradigm. The females tend to be tolerated as a group of predators, and they just kind of stack on top of each other to some extent. The males are not tolerated, so they have much larger home ranges. So this is a male. This is Spring Creek here, and he's moving back and forth between all of those females. So the red dots, I know a little bit hard to see here. This is another male. What he's doing, and I do this with all animals that I put transmitters on, I use the males as the Judas, because he knows where every female is on the landscape. So all I got to do is follow the male around, and he takes me to every single female. And that's what I've done here. The first couple of otters that I handled were males, and they took me to the females, and then I was able to do that. So I'm going to stop right there to get you guys back on time. Does anyone have any questions?
An animal run across the road 10 minutes before I got here, and I couldn't tell if it was a beaver or what it was, or it looked long and skinny running across the road into, I think there was a water area.
If it was running across the road, it was not a beaver. If it was loping, that's the typical mustelid. A mink, an otter, a weasel, wolverine, they all have Fisher, they all have the same lope. Yeah. Have to see it. Yes, in the back. Species or individual? Yes. They're all North American river otters. What my point was at the beginning was they were not part of the release. The otters that we have right now in Northern Illinois came from Indiana, and they came from Wisconsin, because we did the mitochondrial DNA on them.
They just migrated on their own.
Yep. They were already coming this way. exactly.
The ones in Wisconsin, like they have come on their own or? were they
Yes,
brought
yes.
in?
So Illinois benefits being the southern neighbor of Wisconsin for many reasons, but some of the better reasons for me are that you're the source of otter, bobcat. I've had black bear within 4 miles of Cook County. I've had 2 mountain lions that came from South Dakota, and I've had at least 6 timber wolves come through the county. And that's because South Dakota has a burgeoning mountain lion population, so the males come this way. And I've been told to stop. I'm going to shut up. Okay, thank you.